So, you're getting ready to build an engine. You've already disassembled it and it's time to get everything ready for machine work, but you don't know where to start. Well, I just dropped my 454 off at the local machine shop here in town. I like to make sure that everything is clean and prepared as much as possible for the machinist so that he can focus on the parts of the work that I can't do. It's always nice when a machinist is impressed with how clean and prepared the parts are. So come along with me as I prep my 454 and I'll show you how to impress your machinist too. So as you can see, I already have my 454 disassembled and I've decided to build a 496. So the only thing I'm going to be using is my block, but I'll go over prepping the heads, the rods, the crank, and the pistons so you can take them to the machine shop. First, as far as rods and pistons goes, I've always allowed the machine shop to handle swapping the pistons if I'm keeping the stock press-on style rods. So what I do is I visually inspect the rod for straightness and to make sure that the rod bearing hasn't spun and damaged the rod. Make sure you keep the rod caps with the rods. I actually stamp the rods so I can keep them together and keep them identified so they don't ever get mixed up. If you're attempting to reuse your pistons, then you can inspect to see if the condition of the top of the piston, the skirts and the ring lands to see if they're possibly usable. I've personally never reused pistons because every engine I've built was either so worn out that it needed to be bored out or I was upgrading pistons anyways. If you're going to reuse your crank, give it a good once over, and at this point you can check the rod and main journals with a caliper to see if they've been undersized in the past. If your bearings haven't been trashed, then you could probably find the part numbers on them, and that can also tell you if they've been rebuilt and if they've been undersized. If your crank looks as bad as mine, then you will definitely need to have a conversation with the machine shop to see if it's even worth saving. When you contact the machine shop, y'all will settle on what needs to be done before you can drop the parts off and get a game plan so you can get the best results. Prepping a block takes a little bit of time, but taking the time now definitely helps with the end result. First, we're going to remove the freeze plugs, the oil galley plugs, and the cam bearings, and then we can get the block cleaned up. I will have videos on how to remove and replace all the parts like the oil galley plugs and the cam bearings and all that, and I'll put those links in the description below. I'm going to be doing most of the work to my heads here at the shop. But I will be sending them to the machine shop so they get a good surface prepped on them, so that make sure they get a good seal with the head gaskets. But here's a few things you can do to them. First, you need to visually inspect the combustion chamber to make sure there's no cracks or any kind of damage inside. Making sure you clean up all the carbon and stuff, and giving a good once over can help out, because if you spot a crack now, that'll save wasted time when it gets to the machine shop and they end up doing on a cast head, if they are doing a Magnaflux on it and finding cracks, or an aluminum head. If you can find it here at the house instead of finding it at the machine shop, that's going to save time. If you're going to paint your head, make sure that you clean up any rough spots or casting flashing that's on the outside of the head. That'll just help it be easier so that you can paint it later on, give it a good place for the paint to stick on it. Make sure that you remove any galley plugs and clean up any built up debris on any of the water jackets or anything inside the head. That'll help when it gets to the machine shop. That'll also make it easier for the sonic cleaner or whatever that they dunk your head in to clean it. We'll make sure it does a better job because you've already done your part of the prep work. All right, so first up for prepping this block for the machine shop is to remove all the freeze plugs and the oil galley plugs. I'm going to remove all I can. I have to actually put the engine on the table to get the stuff on the back side because I can't really get to it with it on the stand. But I'm going to get everything I can reach right here. Then I'll put it on my table and finish the back side of it up. One important yet overlooked step of prepping the block is to deburr it. There are many reasons for doing this step, and it is a very tedious job, so I'll have a separate how-to on discussing this step. Most people will let the machine shop remove and install their cam bearings since it does require special tools and is not a step you really can afford to get wrong. I like to do it myself, and if you want to learn how to remove and install them, I'll have a video on this step as well. When you have everything removed from the block, you can take some time to clean all oil galleys, water jackets, and any oil or dirt deposits that are stuck on the block. This will be a good time to clean all the threads and make any note of any that need to be repaired. Once you have all of your parts prepped and ready to send to the machine shop, you can start getting them ready for the trip. It helps to take pictures of everything that you have. You can stamp markings into your heads and block as well so that you can identify them later. You can also pack up all of your parts into boxes to keep them safe for the trip. I've used old tires in the past to set my block on in the bed of the truck and strap it down, but now I have an engine cradle that I'll be using. So I bolt the block on the cradle and then I strap the whole thing down. I like that the cradle can be taken apart and stored in the shop and not lay around outside collecting junk in it. I bolted my main caps onto my block. It keeps them safe that way. Make sure that you keep them in order or you will be paying for an aligned bore to ensure that the crank will spin afterwards. Big block Chevrolets have an arrow pointing to the front of the engine, and you can stamp numbers into each main cap to keep them in order. One thing to check out when you're prepping your engine to go to the machine shop is, especially like on a 454 like this, you'll see that it has a shaved section on the block, just at the deck surface, and that's actually to help ease up valve shrouding, because the combustion chamber in the heads can be bigger than the actual bore of the engine block, and this is much worse of a problem like a 396 or something much smaller bore size. It's not that big of a deal on a 454 or something unless you have some really ridiculous combustion chambers in your head. But it still is a little bit of an edge here, and mine is pretty chewed up. So I'm gonna trim that down just to knock that edge off, because this edge could actually be sharp points like this in the combustion chamber. As you're building your compression up, I'm pushing this engine up close to 11 to 1. Those sharp edges could actually turn into basically like a glow plug and turn your gas engine into a diesel engine, which you do not want. So round these edges off here and get them out. You don't want to go too far on this, because everything you take every bit of material you take out of your combustion chamber, you make it larger, you lower your compression, less power. So it's one thing to check out. So less is definitely more. You don't want to go hog wild here. So I'm just going to break the edges and clean it up because they're pretty rough. So what I'm going to do. I'm actually using a hand file because it's not even that much material to use. So we'll get started now. Now that you have your parts ready to take to the machine shop and you've gotten a game plan with your machinist, all that's left is to drop them off and wait for the work to be completed on them. Then the real fun begins. I hope this helps you tackle your own engine rebuild, and just remember, take your time and just be patient with it. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and most machine shops will be very helpful and will even handle most of these things for you if you don't feel comfortable doing it yourself. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up and make sure you subscribe so you can get more content like this right here at Alley Cat Customs.